Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to the Pipeline Podcast number 108. I'm your host today, Darren McClymans, and joining us, we have the one, the only, the fabulous, the amazing Mike is here. Mike, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. What about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thank you for making
That's awesome.
room in your schedule to be here today. Obviously, we worked together a little bit over on Council of Creators, Chainsaw Reacts'
Yeah.
channel. I was talking to Tyler about this when I had him on a couple months ago, and I think the one thing about Council is you know all these people, but you don't really know all these people. It's like you've worked with all these
Yeah.
people, you've had somewhat conversations, but it's like, but wait, have we, or have I just talked around you, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a thing, and yeah, I'm very excited to kind of hear your thoughts on our main topic for today, which is Joker Fiadu, I think is how you people would say it.
Something like that.
Something.
Something like that. Yeah.
I'd argue maybe one of DC's more controversial movies, at least in the last couple years.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It's been, it's been an interesting week because I saw it kind of late. I didn't see the movie until Tuesday, I think. I saw it on Tuesday, and so I had about a whole week of hearing everybody's opinions on it, hearing everyone's thoughts. And I was like, okay, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what everyone's talking about. Is that justified? Is it not? And yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little later in today's stream. But before we jump into it, I like to start these streams by asking my guests what media they're consuming lately. Obviously, everyone's watching something different: movies, TV, games. We were talking a little bit on Council. I know you're watching like a bunch of like Halloween-y type movies, right?
Yeah. So I've been reviewing on my channel just for like Halloween special, kind of just a horror movie every single day, and so the latest one I have for Kevin Bacon's Stir of Echoes, which is like every week I'm trying to do like a different kind of like subtopic within it. So it's like first week I did where it was like anniversary week, where I just covered movies like from 1984, 94, just like movies that are celebrating like an anniversary, and then this week was like I think it was like Hidden Gem week or something like that is what I called it. Sure. And so I think in the lineup right now I have just a little sneak peek. We have Phantasm, Stir of Echoes, and Frailty, which I already have done, and then Lake Mungo, The Crazies, Daybreakers, and then Hell House LLC. So looking forward to filming those for episodes. Yeah
amazing. That's something I always want to do. Like I always want to watch new movies. Like various times I'm like, I'm going to watch a movie once a day, and that never happens. I do like once in a week, and it's like, well, that's it for me. Trying to find the time.
Yeah, so I mean, I've just recently started up a job, so I kind of made my horror movie watching list for the last this month and last month. So I've not been doing a great job as of recently though, because like I have also been playing a lot of games on my PlayStation because I just got it in August, I want to say. So been playing through The Last of Us and Last of Us 2, and then also played through Spider-Man and a little bit of Resident Evil 2. So and then Spider-Man Miles Morales as well. So
those are fun ones. I'm also very bad at gaming. I got a PS5 last year for Spider-Man 2. I was like, man, I have to play that game. I have to live in a hype. Was it worth getting a whole $500 system? Maybe not, but it was still a really fun time. But like when I got that, I was like, I'm gonna play all these games now. I have to get my money's worth. I still have not completed a game since I played Spider-Man 2. God. I mean, it seems like you're starting off good. Like Last of Us Part 1 is great. Last of Us Part 2 is great. You were talking about a little bit of that on Council. You're kind of going through that journey. Are you watching the show as well, or are you staying away from that?
I saw the first season when it aired, and I hadn't played the games.
Gotcha.
So I went in with kind of a fresh pair of eyes on both of the games, More so 2, because I had only known the big controversial thing that happened.
Sure.
What's up, Marvel fan?
Yes.
Yeah. So I went in only knowing the big controversy at the beginning of the game, and that was literally it. The first game, I'd seen season 1, obviously, so I knew kind of what happened in it. I was kind of caught off guard with the Bill's Town segment because, like, you know, in the show, Bill is dead, and in the game he's alive. So I was like, oh, okay. Good surprise. And actually, I think the game segment was a little bit more effective too, just because you know, there's the Death Note. So
sure.
Yeah.
I think it's almost better knowing a little, like knowing the big thing that happens in 2 before play, or before watching it.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to or before playing it, I mean, like, because like I knew that going in, and I know everyone was devastated when that happened, but I was like, well, yeah, I knew that, and it kind of makes, like, narratively, I do think it makes sense within the story for that to happen. I'm just so curious when that season airs for the people who knows nothing.
That is going to be an interesting wake up call for people. Like, I'm just imagining episode 1 right out the gate. It ends with the golf club, and it's just like, wow, that's gonna stir some controversy week 1. So is there a confirmed release date for season 2 yet?
It's early next year that they've said. It doesn't seem like as early as last season, so I'm thinking like maybe in March, April-ish kind of time. I'm curious how they're splitting it up, because they've said they're splitting it up into at least 2, if not 3 seasons this second game. So I am curious where they stop, because I could see if maybe they want to prolong the big reveal, or the big moment. If maybe you want to make that the end of season 2, might work. But also, do you not like? Then you kind of have the issue where, like, well, I'm not coming back for season 3 because they killed off blank, right? So like that might be a thing as well. I don't know. That'd be interesting.
What my idea is that they're going to do season 2 is Ellie's side of the story in part 2. Season 3 would be Abby's side of the story, and then season 4 is going to be Santa Monica. But
I
don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. And then the question is, like, what's after that? Is it done, or like I know there's been rumors of like a part 3 in the wind over the years. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, we're going to be getting into a couple of news stories here. There's a big one I don't really want to talk about this week, just because there is still a little bit of controversy around it. And I'm like, I'm going to let it sit a little bit, and then I'll talk about it in I just don't know how to address it yet. So I want to be like, all right, let's see kind of where we land. Alrighty, our first one here, and this one just came out today. I'm very glad, because I was kind of running out of news stories to talk about. Karate Kid. Next year's Karate Kid installment has officially found its title. Now, before we jump into this, are you a fan of the Karate Kid franchise at this point? Are these things that you are a fan of? You watched, either as a kid or later in life?
So I watched the original trilogy and the remake when I was a kid, and I grew up just like on rotation with the original and part 2. Part 3 I wasn't huge on, outside of Terry Silver, which still is a valid opinion. I still stand by that. I didn't watch the next Karate Kid until I think COVID, and then I was just like, okay, that makes sense why people don't watch or don't talk about this. But and then I think sometime, might have been the end of COVID or like early 2021 or something like that, I started watching Cobra Kai, and I love that show, man. Like, I think I saw that I started watching it around when season 3 dropped, and I think I watched it within like a week. I was hooked on that show, man. I remember I sat through season 1 in a single day, and I've never done that with a TV show before, and like Stranger Things didn't do it. This show I did. So that was like the one time I think I've ever actually sat through an entire season of a show in a day. So Yeah,
Cobra
and
Kai's
I
fun.
love. Yeah, I really really enjoy that show. Seasons 1 through 5 are fantastic. Season 6, interesting so far. It's not my
Yeah,
favorite. It's not
I
my
agree.
least favorite though, I would say. But I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it is my least favorite so far. But like, I'm interested in seeing where it's gonna go
Yeah.
because it kind of seemed like it's split up into 3 parts and then kind of seems like they're already at the halfway point. It's
Hmm.
kind of weird, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the show. I think no matter what, like, I think it's one of those rare shows where it's like, even when I have my criticisms, it's like I don't care because it's so much fun. Where it's like, oh, that
yeah,
makes no sense, or why are they doing this? And then they just start fighting. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Let's go! Like, it's just
yeah.
one of those shows. I am curious how they're gonna wrap it up and how it, if it at all connects to the movie, because it is interesting. Because I feel like we haven't. I don't know if we've ever been in this exact predicament before where you're kind of revamping a older franchise into a movie where there's already kind of an installment going on at the moment, and there does seem to be a
Right.
line, like there does seem to be like a, yes, they got the Cobra Kai writers to look at the notes, yes, there's somewhat of a connection, they're calling it the like Miyagi verse or whatever they're doing, whatever, um
Weird.
which I think is kind of silly. But so
Mhm.
I'm curious if there is any sprinkles of like setup in the show this season. If there's going to be anything, are they going to like not explain like Daniel LaRusso in this show and then also him in the movie? I'm gonna be curious. But what's your thoughts on this title, Karate Kid Legends?
I kind of dig it. Um, Seems like a little generic,
Mhm.
but I don't hate it.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
do think it's like it is a little cheesy. Like it is just
Yeah.
a wee bit cheesy.
Yeah.
But also so Karate Kid as a franchise is like, if there's one defining
Yeah.
feature of this franchise, it's that it's the most corny cheesy thing, and that's why it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
That's
I
why
mean,
that's why Cobra Kai works,
3.
because I feel like you
Yeah.
could you could be like, oh, it's dark and gritty now, and we're taking it more seriously. It's like, no, it works because they commit to that like '90s cheese, and it's like not a lot of franchises I feel like are doing that. Like they're trying to like revise it for the current age, and I feel like Karate Kid was like, nah, or Cobra Kai was like, nah, we're just gonna keep it the same.
Yeah, and I mean, for sure, I definitely agree with that because I mean, technically speaking, Johnny has been the main character for
Mhm.
basically the whole run of the show thus far, and his whole character in the beginning of it and still to this moment in the show is that he's like not connected with the world, like the current world.
Mhm.
Like he
Yeah.
at the beginning of the show he's using a flip phone, just saying like these like very 80s things that gets him fired from a job. It's just like not politically
Yeah.
correct, and it's just that's what makes the show so fun is just
Right.
it knows how to crank up the cheese when it's needed and also how to be sympathetic, and I really enjoy it for that. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I'm going to be, I'm very curious with this one and kind of where we
Yeah.
proceed with it. I guess obviously that name also kind of makes sense with having like Jackie Chan's character and Daniel LaRusso, kind of these legends of the respective franchises at this point, kind of teaching the
Mhm.
next generation. I'm curious if this is a one-off as well, or if they're going to be like, this is the next trilogy or whatever they're going to do here. Um, I'll be
Yeah,
curious.
it'll be pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Our next story here, we don't typically talk a lot of Star Wars on this show because I'm not like the hugest Star Wars guy, but I did think this is kind of interesting. Ideas for another Obi-Wan Kenobi season is being explored, says Ian McGregor. Were you a fan of the first season of Obi-Wan? Did you watch the first season?
It was a show that initially I kind of liked, and then over time just grew to
Mhm.
not really enjoy it all that
Mhm.
much. It was weird on initial watch. It's just like I don't know. Like on initial watch, you kind of just like ride the wave of excitement, and
Sure.
then once you sit on it, it's just like, yeah, that should have been a movie because there's so many like
Yep.
subplots that get repeated over and over again, and it's so strange. Like, Reva gets stabbed like twice, Leia gets captured twice. Like, I don't know. There was cool things about it, and I really liked the last episode. That was good.
I agree. Yeah.
Episode 5 was pretty good too. Episode 3, I thought it was also really solid, but rest of the show kind of rocky. But
sure. I 100% agree. I think it's very apparent, and this is something Disney Plus struggles with all the time. I'd argue like a good 80% of the things they put out, it's like, especially Marvel, especially Star Wars, like it's very clear they went through a phase where like, okay, here are all our upcoming plots of movies that we want to make, and they were like, but could this be a show? Can we use this to promote our new platform, our new streaming service?
Yeah.
And it feels like we're getting better, right? Like Star Wars is starting to make movies again. It seems like, Marvel has their TV division now, hopefully more streamlined for actual television. I actually think Agatha is one of the most, like, I don't know if you like that show or not, but that to me feels the most like a TV show.
Yeah, actually, I have been rather enjoying it. I actually caught up on it today. I had seen the first episode when I dropped, and I thought it was just okay, and then watched the rest of it today while in class. But I rather enjoyed it, actually. Episode 5 leaves off on a pretty cool hanger, and I'm excited for the next one. So
yeah, they're kind of living in their own little world, and I think that's like kind of what I want more from their TV stuff. And but no, like, to get back on track with Star Wars, like, I liked the first season. I don't know, I am a kind of a sucker for like the sequel stuff. Like, I don't know, I do just enjoy that era quite a bit, and I thought it was fun. Like, it wasn't anything. I didn't think it was anything special, but it was fun to see these characters back on screen and just kind of like this full-on Jedi TV show. I thought was really fun. But I do agree. I do think it should have been a movie. I think everything screamed it. And also, just like, I don't know, box office wise, it makes sense. Like, I feel like that could have been $1 billion movie if marketed correctly. Like, Obi-Wan is just one of those characters that people were like, yeah, I'm gonna go watch an Obi-Wan movie. That's sick.
And also, to be honest, I think Solo did so poorly just because it came out after The Last Jedi. A lot of people lost trust from that, and also because it just wasn't marketed particularly interesting. Like, it wasn't marketed in a way that made it seem cool and unique. And it's not super unique, but for the Star Wars universe, I'm a defender of that movie. I will say, I will defend that until the day I die.
Yeah.
But
Solo's fun.
I will say it wasn't really marketed toward, people that would have seen it otherwise. Like, it wasn't targeted other than Star Wars fans. So I don't know.
And also, it came out didn't it come out like right after like a big Marvel movie or something? Like, wasn't it Infinity War or something?
Actually, I think it was. Which, if I remember right, I saw Solo in theaters, and I don't remember if I saw Infinity War in theaters, but I'm a weird guy. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah.
Would you be open to a second season of this, or do you want them to just kind of be done?
I would like to see their idea for season 2. I don't know exactly where they would go with it, because honestly, I think the ending of the first season leaves off on a way that, like, it would make sense if they just left it there, going into New Hope. But I mean, unless they just want to spend an entire season of just, Obi-Wan, like, doing shit around Tatooine, then I guess have at it, but I don't really know what they're gonna do.
Right.
But
it'll be interesting. Yeah, no, I'm curious. And also there's, I think, a little bit of like, I don't know if I'd say frustration, but like, I think after the Acolyte situation, if you like that show, if you don't like that show, like, I do think we're now in another pickle of like, we want original characters, we want original stuff, and we get the original stuff, and people are like, no, I don't want that. Where's my lightsabers? Where's my Darth Vader? Like, it's like we say one thing and then the audience tells them another. So I am a bit worried it's just going to be the same characters for the next 20 years as well. Like Skeleton Crew comes out in a couple months. I'm curious how that's going to perform. Are they going to do the same thing again?
I completely forgot that show was coming out. I honestly also completely forgot that Acolyte existed. I'm gonna be honest.
Fair.
So
that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. It'll be interesting to kind of see the future of Star Wars. Hello, Darth Bunyan. How's it going, buddy? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, let's dive into our final news story here. This is a bit different than I normally cover on here, but I did want to bring this up because I do think it opens for kind of an interesting conversation about the current state of, I guess, of like TV, I guess, or at least a genre of TV. That 70s show has been canceled at Netflix after just 2 seasons. Now, I
didn't hear about that. What?
Oh, really? Breaking
news.
I
didn't. Oh my god!
Breaking news. So I haven't seen that 90s show. I also haven't seen that 70s show outside of the hundreds of clips I've seen on TikTok over the years. Where that I'm getting really bad about that. Where I feel like I haven't seen all these shows, but I feel like I have because I've seen them on social media. Just the doom scrolling of it all. But I did want to bring this up because it does make me I was very frustrated when I saw this because it was something I was thinking about even before this news came out. Is I think especially in the sitcom world, this is happening a lot. Where studios are like, a very popular, iconic show from the past, had a great run. It had a great ending, and studios are like, hey, people love that. Let's bring that back for a new generation of people. And it comes out, people love that first season, views drop that second season, and they cancel it. And this is happening a lot, I think, especially with sitcoms. This happened with that 90s show. This happened with that, like the Saved by the Bell show, the How I Met Your Father. A lot of these, the iCarly reboot did this. These are happening a lot. And it is making me very concerned and very frustrated because I hate this concept of bringing back a show with a concluded story and concluded characters, bringing them back from the dead just to axe them again. And these characters no longer having concluded arcs and stories and endings.
Yeah. I think I would argue against that for this show in particular, just because it's different characters. Outside of the grandma and grandpa, mom and dad from the original show, there's very little focus on those original characters.
It's a new cast.
Up until, I think it's like the back half of season 2, they don't really focus on any of the characters from that original show. And if there is any of them, it's just a cameo. And they are still in that same spot that they were at the end of the original show. So I like that. I like that for that show. And also, I'm just kind of bummed because this is like me and my mom's show that we would watch together when it dropped. So it's just like, shit. But yeah.
Yeah, and from what I saw, friends who really love the show, I heard, season 1 was a bit rocky, and it sounded like season 2 is really finding its footing, finding its groove.
I preferred season 2 by a good bit. There was one episode that felt like it was ripped out of the original show, and it was like a court case kind of thing, and then they do like a revamped version of the original theme song, and it's just like, oh my god! I was geeking out at that point, man. But I don't know. It's just a bummer. I don't know. But
yeah, I also think there's a little bit of like, do sitcoms work on streaming as well as they would on like network TV? Like
probably not. No. The thing is sitcoms, they don't work as well as they do on network. But at the same time, it's just like, I think people have moved past the sitcom side of things because not a whole lot of people watch network television anymore.
Yeah.
It's more serialized shows like Breaking Bad, Dexter, Outer Banks, Stranger Things, stuff like that. like that's what people are more engaged in now. I hear more chatter about Outer Banks and
Sure.
Stranger Things and Grey's Anatomy, like shit like that.
Sure.
Rather than, oh, did you see the new season of That 90s Show? I don't hear people saying that, but yeah. I don't know.
Sure.
It's just it seems like people have kind of just moved past that at this point, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, and I guess like the sitcom formula is made for like the Netflix or like the like network 20-minute formula. So like when you do put it on streaming, it's just like, well, you're just copying the formula that was on network. And that's a very good point. There are very few, I'd say, like ongoing network sitcoms at this point, or at least at the popular, like you have Abbott Elementary, like that's still going on. You have Always Sunny is still going on somehow. Like you have a couple that are still kind of hanging in there, and they keep running and stuff like that. But no, that's definitely a really good point, and I'm gonna be curious the future of like just sitcoms in general. Like, is it a dying art form?
Yeah.
Do they continue to keep pushing, I guess?
Okay, here's another thing too. The network television side of it, it was a weekly thing. They drop stuff like this on Netflix and it's bingeable. So people are going to try and binge it, and then it doesn't work necessarily like that. You're going to want to keep coming back every week. And then so it kind of just like dies out quickly because it's not a weekly thing that like, oh yeah, did you see the new episode of Big Bang Theory? Did you see the new episode of The Office? Like stuff like that. Also, speaking of The Office, that
sequel series
reboot, that's not gonna work out nearly as well as some people are thinking it is. But
I am glad that they changed it from a reboot to like a spin-off. Like I think that think the reboot would have not worked as well as they wanted it to. But I think a sequel, it might still not work out. I don't know how that's going to go. But also I think a thing with like streaming and sitcoms is like how sitcoms used to work is they would write the first couple episodes, see how people would like see what worked, see what didn't, see what they had to improve upon. That's just not a thing on stream. You can't do that. We're giving you the whole season now, and if you don't like it, we're done. But if you do like, I mean, even if you do like it, it's done. Like it's so hard, I think, to fit into that formula.
And here's like adding on to that too. That show, I mean, that 90s show was not in the Netflix top 10 for more than maybe a week. Either season 1, season 2, not in there for very long at all. So adding on to just the fact that like it's not keeping its footing on the service, just I don't know. It's definitely starting to slow down in terms of people watching this form of television, I guess.
Sure. And then I would even argue that's a greater conversation about Netflix as a whole, and why I don't think their formula works very well. I've talked about that on the show so many times, but like I don't think the binge model works anymore, or at least not all the time. Like it sometimes works in their favor, sometimes it does well, but can you imagine Stranger Things for 8 weeks straight? Like they would. I've said it on here. I think if Netflix did the weekly format, they would dominate every streaming service. Like I think Stranger Things weekly, One Piece weekly, Avatar weekly. They have the biggest shows in the world, I think, but they drop it all at once, so people watch it in like 2 days, and it
dies out so quickly. And I think most services should take note of that. I mean, Prime Video, they kind of have it to the point where like the first season they just like test the waters, see how popular it gets, and then the second season they do weekly episodes. Like they did that for The Boys. They're probably going to do that with Fallout. Netflix did the part 1, part 2 formula a couple times, but it was literally just because the back half or the last chapter of it wasn't finished. Like that's what happened with Stranger Things, and I'd probably guess that is what happened with That 90s Show. And also because they actually have like a different plan for Cobra Kai. But trying to get it closer to the movie. But there's, the weekly formula definitely seems like it's working. Specifically, I mean, Disney Plus.
Yeah.
They don't get the numbers that, you'd think they'd get, but they have the legs. They have it in the long run. Agatha has been in the conversation for the past month.
Yeah.
That 90s show had for 2 days, nothing. So
yeah, and like they're clearly trying with their new, like, Netflix, but they're like, oh, drop 5 now, 5 later, 5 again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like those breaks are so hard for people because it's like, well, I watched the first half, and by the time new season drops, it's like I didn't hear that a new season came out, or I now don't care. Like I've now lost interest. Especially like what was it? Manifest? I don't know if you ever watched that. They had an entire year break. Like they dropped their first 10, and then they dropped another 10 a whole year later. It was the same season, and it was like people didn't care. People were done. Like they thought it was over. Like,
I mean, that's what's probably going to end up happening with Yellowstone. Breaking Bad didn't really drop the interest from what I can understand, but they did that too. Whereas, technically they don't advertise it as the same season. They still, to this day, put it as season 5 and then the final season, but like everywhere you look, it's just season 5. But like they kind of advertise it as 2 seasons, but it ends off, like, season 5 ends up on such a note where it makes sense that it keeps going on for like the whole season. So it's definitely a weird thing to discuss, just that that gap. But
it's clear everyone's, it's a wild frontier. Everyone's just trying to find what works, even after all these years. Like, it's streaming's now 10 years old at this point, 10, 12 years old at this point.
Yeah.
And we're still just trying to find what works. They had the thing that came out the other day that what Apple was merging with Amazon, I think. So it's a crazy.
Well, it wasn't like a merger. It was just
like a bundle, right?
Yeah. So if you pay the same fee for Apple TV itself on Prime for it, then you unlock everything that's available through that. So it's like the same thing that they have, like the Max add-on, the Shudder add-on, the Paramount Plus, MGM Plus, like stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's good.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so adding on to that though too, like the Amazon and Apple thing, I think it's actually a pretty good idea to just put everything on one service. So what Prime has, you just like get the add-ons and whatnot, and just like build up every month, or like build up for like the bills for every month, and it's just like one big package. So it's just one service, you get access to everything. If they pulled that off, I think that would actually work really well. But there's Disney, which is the most capitalist company in the world. They're not gonna do that.
No.
Netflix, they've been going at it for so long. They're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But if they did, I think it would work out pretty well.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. I feel like each streamer has like one really good thing they're good at, but then they struggle in an area that another one's good at. Like, I think Disney Plus and Max have the catalog that they need to have a good streaming service, but they don't have the original content, where you have things like Hulu and Apple and Paramount, where like they got good original content, but their catalog's shit. Like, they don't got a good like Apple. I think that's their biggest strong point. I think they have some of the best original content that you'll find, but then there's nothing else outside of those original content.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, they've got a ton of big movies that come out. I mean, like last year you had, what was it, like 3 $200 million budget films that went to theaters for a little bit, and then they dropped on Prime, or not on Prime, on Apple TV. And like, that's cool. They did that with Wolves just this, was it like 2 weeks ago or something like that? And it's not a bad idea to do that per se. It's just, you're not gonna get nearly as much money doing that, and I think Apple, they have the money to spend for it. Let's be honest,
Sure.
but like, it's in the long run, you're losing a lot of money doing that. So streaming doesn't get nearly as much money as a ticket and a seat. Yeah. It's an interesting way of doing things for sure, but they do not have that back catalog for sure.
No, it's so if their thing with Amazon did go through and work well, that could be in their favor. Just be like, well, you just get it along with Amazon. Amazon, I think, has a pretty good. Amazon actually probably, I think, is the best because I think they have a pretty good catalog and their original content. Maybe not as big as like a Netflix, but like I think they're getting there, like with Reaper and The Boys and Invincible, and they're doing stuff. Cameron asks if we've talked about the Jon Stewart casting yet. I didn't. I did kind of want to wait to let it kind of simmer a little bit because I know it's a pretty hot topic at the moment. But did you see the casting? How are you kind of feeling about it?
So I'm not familiar with the actor, but I heard he was in Rebel Ridge recently, and I've heard nothing but great things about that movie. So I like the idea of what they're doing, getting like a smaller actor to get his big like standout role through something like Green Lantern. But also at the same time, they casted Kyle Chandler, who's like a veteran in this kind of thing, and it's just like, okay, that's interesting. But I also am a Kyle Chandler diehard. I love that dude. So
I am a little like, it's very clear what they're doing. Like they're clearly doing a young Ricky, teamed up with an older veteran thing.
Yeah,
and I like that in theory. I don't necessarily love that's Hal Jordan though, or Hal Jordan though. I especially if the rumors are true that this is his only project. He dies at the end or retires or whatever is at the end. I do think that's a bit of a waste of Hal Jordan, especially since there's really been nothing else for Hal Jordan since the movie. And like, I don't know. Like, is this how we want him to be remembered, as like the old one? I feel like there's other Green Lanterns you could put in that spot to make that work better. But we'll see. I guess it's basically the same as like the DC, like the DC AMU, like their like TV universe for years, where it's like Hal isn't really in the picture in that show. It is mainly just Jon Stewart and his stories. So I assume that's the direction, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then I guess in terms of DC, while we're on the topic, we should jump into DC's newest movie, Joker Folie, is if that's how you would say it. Now before we hop in, I do want to talk about the first one really quickly, because obviously back in 2019 they released the first Joker movie. It made $1 billion at the box office, which I still can't believe happened. Like when I think of Joker, I'm like, wait, that made $1 billion? That was the only rated R movie for a long time to make $1 billion? That's crazy. Well, what was your kind of thoughts on that first movie?
I was a little late to the game on it. I didn't go see it in the theaters. I think I was in like 6th grade when it came out. So I was late to the party on it. I ended up watching it during COVID. And initially, I didn't really know how to feel about it. It was interesting, cool idea for Joker, but I was just like so partial to traditional Joker that it was just like such a big departure from that. I was just like really conflicted about it, especially because if you haven't seen the movie, spoilers, I guess, but there's a big portion of the movie that revolves around Thomas and Bruce Wayne, and I was just like, why are they making Bruce Wayne a little kid when Joker's becoming Joker? Like, it's a little weird. So I didn't really know exactly how to feel about the movie when I first watched it. Rewatched it a couple years later, and I liked it more, but I still wasn't 100% sure on it. And then I watched it with a friend who, at the time, said it was like his favorite movie ever, and I was like, that's a bold statement. And I was like, let's see what this is about, man. And he just like gave like his kind of like inside on it, like what he appreciated about it. And I was just like, okay, yeah, this movie is fucking great.
Right.
I respect that a lot. And I do really enjoy it. I didn't rewatch it before this film, and I just didn't rewatch it, like I said. So a lot of people were saying it just doesn't really hold up that well. I want to watch it again just to see if it, if that statement holds true for me. Especially though with the answers given in Joker 2 and the continuation of the story, I want to see how it sits on me. Joker 2 though. Joker 2. Yikes.
I remember at one point in time I said Joker was my favorite comic book film. I saw a tweet, or like I saw like a Facebook post from 2019 where I was like, I like ranked my top 10. It was my number 1. I saw it today. I was like, what the hell? Like what a pretentious, what a pretentious pick for my number 1. And I do think it's a good movie. Like I think it's a very well made, very well shot, very well written, art house movie. And that's probably kind of where I got that. Where I was like, well, it's the most well made is probably what my defense was.
Yeah.
It. And I'm actually might still agree with that. Like I think it's a very well done movie in terms of like, how it's shot and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But like I do think, and I do think Joker only works if you kind of think of it as like an Elseworld. Like I think, especially with the newer terms of what an Elseworld is, you do have to go into it with the spot of like this is on its own turf. It's its own little separate universe on its own, similar to like a Gotham or a Smallville, where it's like don't expect Superman to come down and start beating people up. Like it's just not that kind of universe.
And also it kind of beats its own, ideas with the idea of even having a sequel. It's such a good one-off Elseworld story. It's just like, why the hell are we doing a sequel?
Sure. And yeah, I mean, in terms of Joker 2, like they announced that actually not even that crazy long ago. Like I actually think they got like through the production of it pretty quickly in the last couple of years. They announced it, and people were like, okay, that's interesting. And then I'm pretty sure they announced separately that it was going to be a musical, which broke the internet. I remember that coming out, and people were like, "What the hell? What are they doing?"
And then Lady Gaga saying, "Oh, it's not a musical. It's just it uses music to tell what's going on in a story." That's what a musical is. But yeah, and then the trailer dropped. That kind of sold me. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of sold on it.
Great trailer. That first trailer was really good.
I didn't watch any other trailers besides that. Going off of that initial trailer, and just like the simple concept of it, I was like, okay, this could be kind of cool. Yeah. And then we got the movie.
I will say, like, I actually was very excited for Joker 2. I was someone that really defended the idea of a second movie, especially when they announced it was a musical, because I loved that concept. I think as a concept, it's great. For one, there's never been a comic book musical before, like a comic book movie musical before. That's a first of its kind ever. And I really like this idea of like this Arkham Asylum. You don't know what's real, you don't know what's not, musical in their head, like a headspace kind of movie. And I genuinely have like defended it almost all year. It's like I think it's going to be really, really good. Because like even with the first Joker movie, like even if you don't like it, even if it's not your cup of tea, I do think it's like, I don't like using this very much, but like subjectively a pretty good movie in terms of like how it's made and stuff like that. Like I thought it was gonna be one of those where it's like, even if you don't like it, it was still a well-made, well-crafted movie. And not everyone would agree with that with the second movie, I'd say.
Okay. For me personally, I would say, yeah, well directed, well shot, well, scored,
sure,
good performances, story-wise, there's certain sequences too that were really weirdly choreographed. Like, I guess kind of jumping into it, there's just like one bit in it where it's just like, you know, one of the guards like says, "You only gets a cigarette if he makes us laugh," or something like that. So then, you know, he goes up to the guard and he tells him a joke, and he's like, "All right, here's your cigarette," and he's like, "Thanks, buddy." Pats him on the back, and he just fucking slaps him in the back of the head. That made me laugh so ironically. It was just like, I found that shit so bafflingly bad. It was just like, who on earth comes up with this idea?
There's bits of the movie that is definitely funny when it's not supposed to be funny. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to be funny or not, but the entire courtroom scene when he comes in with like the detective accent, he's like, "So, what do you think with the case?" And it's just like, this is so hilarious. Like, I don't know if he's supposed to be funny here, or if this is like I was like, this is hilarious. Like, I don't it's crazy. But no, like, in terms of like the musical aspects of it, like, I do it is very disappointing to me, because like, again, that's why I was excited. Like, like a regular Joker sequel, I was like, I honestly couldn't care too much. Like, I do think I had a perfect ending with what they did with it, but like, that was a thing where like, okay, there clearly a lot of passion behind it. I figured Joaquin Phoenix doesn't normally do sequels. I was like, this got to be the best gosh dang movie ever if he's signing on for another one. I was like, okay, there's something really cool, and the musical aspects disappointed me so much, because I don't know, like, there's some good stuff in there, but it feels wasted. To me, it feels shoehorned in. It felt like you made the movie, you had a regular movie, and then you filmed music videos and implanted them into the movie, is kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I thought there was one sequence that actually kind of worked where, you know, it's like trying to play the idea of it's in Joker's head and doesn't actually happen. And then the next one, you know, where they're escaping from prison and they're just singing a song and boogieing down. It's just like, the hell? And it's just like, we're supposed to believe like this shit actually happened. And it's just like, okay.
You really can't tell what's real in this movie and what's not. And I feel like on paper, I like that. On paper, I like, okay, there's a bit of mystery. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's not. Like, and in theory, that's great. But I feel like it's not done creatively. It's done lazily, where it's just like, well, we can do whatever we want because you can't tell anyway. And it's just like...
Exactly. And also, kind of the magic... I agree, for sure. But also, part of what made the ending of the original Joker so good is that it was, you know, like, you don't know if this happened just in his head. Sure. Like, if he just shot... Like, he thought he shot a dude on live television. But it's basically all answered in this film, where it just kind of takes out that ending, makes it so not ambiguous, and
and like, again, like, there are parts of this movie that I really enjoyed. Like, I definitely see the vision, you know, like, where they're going, the overall idea. Like, okay, they're in Gotham, you know, we're kind of picking up with Arthur, you know, post all this going on. I think there's story to be told with this version of Arthur post what happened. Like, and there's bits of it I think really works, but I do think they sometimes went in the most uninteresting direction with it. Like, you kind of start off and he's like, he's not the Joker, like, he's broken, he's turned down, and his arc in the first 2.5 is like rebuilding that, and like, you know, kind of like reminding him, oh no, he is the Joker, he is that guy, just for him to be, actually, I'm not, guys. It was like, okay, I feel like we wasted a lot of time. I feel like we could have, I don't know.
Yeah, and that ending, I kind of hated the ending. Okay. If I'm being completely honest, it's just, it leaves off on a point that could have been cool if you just ended it where Harley or Lee, whatever the fuck her name was, just like, you know, says, you're not Joker, I don't want you. I think that's a really cool idea of like exploring the theme of loving someone for not who they actually are, but like a different side, a different persona of them. I think that's a really cool idea. If they had ended it where Lee just leaves Arthur, that would have been cool. If they hadn't gone on for another 5 minutes where he just gets stabbed to death,
sure,
would have been better. If they,
I feel like,
didn't just fucking kill him off. Yeah. But
yeah, I feel like killing him off did feel a bit random to me. It did feel like, I feel like you didn't necessarily need to do that. I think the whole thing of like, he's not the Joker, I honestly didn't have too much of a huge problem with. I think it's maybe because I guess I never really saw him as the Joker to begin with. And I know there's an argument to be had, well, why are you making a DC movie about the Joker if he's not the Joker? And I'm like, okay, that's valid. But like, I always like subscribe to the theory from the first one that like, he's not necessarily the Joker, but he inspired, like he is the one to inspire the Joker. Like he is kind of the inspiration. He's more of an idea than a person kind of thing. And I guess I just wanted to see a bit more of that, because I think that's a fascinating idea. Like, I think the scene when like all the other like they blow up the building and they come on and they got him in the car, like, like keep your head down. Like, to me, that's fascinating. I'm like, oh, I want to see what the Joker has inspired into the real world consequences of the Joker. To me, are fascinating. We don't really explore it too much. It's kind of left more open, I guess.
Yeah, okay, and here's a little idea. If they had, used the character that killed him off, and he takes up the mantle of the Joker, and he actually is the Joker, that could be cool. But they just left it. He kills him off for no fucking reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and like again, like this Joker was never going to fight the Batman. Like, I feel like there are some people that really did think so. That, like, there's people that, like, it's connected to, like, the Dark Knight, and, he's going to inspire Heath Ledger. And I was like, that was never going to happen. That was, and what we wanted of that to, I wouldn't have wanted that to happen, I don't think. At least not in this iteration of this character. Like, to me, it always just felt like, hey, we have brief inspiration from the character of the Joker. We're taking kind of that overall inspiration, and we're kind of running and doing our own thing with it. And I think overall, I'm actually pretty okay with that. Like, I know we're in a weird era, and I think we're starting to get out of that era where it's like people who don't really care about comic book movies making comic book films. And I do feel like with everything Todd Phillips has said in interviews the last couple weeks, that's very clear to me, where it's like, oh, he really didn't give a shit about DC or the Joker or Batman or any of these characters that he's working with. And that, I think, bled into my opinion on the film just a little bit, where it's like, like you kind of taste that once you kind of hear some of the things that have been said, some of the things with Harley, where it's like, that's not really Harley. That's like... Yeah.
And also, how much you want to bet that Todd Phillips really only agreed to do this because he was given like $20 million to do it? He probably didn't even want to do it. It just... money speaks.
Yeah, and it sucks. Yeah, it does suck, because like, I you'd like to think that directors and actors are above that, but ultimately, and I don't blame them. If DC rolled up to my, if like Warner Brothers rolled up to my house and like, hey, if you make this a movie, we'll give you a bunch of money, I'd be like, all right, but I'll make your movie. Like, I can't blame them. I really can't.
Yeah, if you make a Captain Condiment movie, we'll give you $30 million.
I'm like, hell yeah, I don't know how to make a movie, but I'll do it. Sure. Like, let's do it.
Polka Dot Man solo film. I'm down for it.
Hell yeah, I'll do it. But yeah, no, I do hope DC's kind of heading into like a new direction with their films. I think all around, like, I think DC needed to, like, if you like the DCEU or not, we needed something new. Like, we needed to start over. And James Gunn has said a couple of things that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think everything he's doing is perfect, but it does seem like he's making his movie, right now at least, from the heart, or at least that's what he's portraying to us, is like he's focusing on the writers first, the directors first, the the image first, the story first, before he's over the overall like connectivity of things, the overall budget, the overall money, and that makes me excited. Again, I don't know how much of that is real. Like, obviously people can put up whatever, but like it seems like we're heading into a bright future for DC, at least.
It would make sense too, though, because James Gunn has had to work in that environment where he had to work for the greater story. Even though Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't have a whole lot of connective tissue outside of introducing Thanos in the first film, there isn't, like, I mean, he still had to introduce these characters that were used in bigger films. So he kind of has experience with that and probably has talked to multiple people and just said, like, I don't like this about Marvel. And so he went to DC and isn't doing that. And I believe if he isn't, I like James Gunn. I think he's a trustworthy figure in Hollywood. Yeah. I get if someone doesn't like him. His humor isn't for everyone.
Right.
So is any movie. So, yeah, art is subjective. If you don't like him, you don't like him. So what? It doesn't affect the people that shouldn't affect the people that do like him. So, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I really like what he's said, where it does really feel like he's kind of looking like I think he has the advantage of looking out at the great beyond of his experience at Marvel. He said he's looked at Star Wars. He said he's looked at like the TV stuff, like the Young Justice and the Justice League and the Arrow. Like he's kind of looked. He has the opportunity to look at the grand scheme of things and be like, okay, here's everything that's worked so far. Here's everything that doesn't, and kind of collecting, putting all that stuff together and be like, okay, this is what I think will work. Will he succeed in all fronts? Absolutely not. They never will. Like, he's going to mess up in areas.
Trial and error. Yeah, trial and error.
Yeah, no cinematic universe ever. Like, if you like Star Wars, you like Marvel, you like whatever. It's always going to be
something goes wrong. That's, I mean, like people say, there's never a perfect crime. There's no way of doing this perfectly either. Right. It's basically the same thing. And also, if you even look at just like the slate that he has lined up, how does Lanterns, Superman, Batman Family, Swamp Thing, how does that connect? Right. I'm just curious, how does any of that connect?
Sure.
We'll see. But it definitely doesn't seem like... Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, because it is interesting because, not to get way off track on like DC as a whole, but like he has said it is going to be this interconnected universe with movies and games and TV and whatever. Yeah. But then he also said that you won't have to see any one project to understand another. As like, how do those two things compute? Like, eventually we're going to have like a Justice League movie. How are you going to do that? Because again, that is the biggest problem right now with streaming, with Marvel and stuff like that, where it's like, well, I haven't seen the last 18 projects. Can I watch?
Yeah, you have to do so much homework.
Yeah.
And I think maybe what he's gonna try to do is use the movies for bigger story and do video games and TV shows as like side, like smaller things. Maybe besides, I mean, Lanterns is gonna set up. Yeah, Lanterns is gonna set up Jon Stewart, which if they ever do Justice League, then he's a key component.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's definitely a weird idea of, he's trying to do interconnective tissue while also saying there's not really going to be like too much that you have to follow. But I don't know. At that point too, though, if you're going to reintroduce like certain plot points, like character arcs or something like that, where, if you do Justice League and you haven't seen Batman Brave and the Bold, Superman, stuff like that, like imagine they're gonna try and like just retread character arcs or something like that. Like, I'm just thinking that could be an issue, but maybe not.
Yeah, and yeah, like there are certain things where it's like there are just going to be things with the cinematic universe that just it's going to, you have to do these tiny things that aren't going to work. Like I think Avengers runs into that exact same issue where it's like the Avengers movies are great, but sometimes they don't treat every character well because it's from a different director or a different writer. Like a lot of the people don't like the Guardians characters in the Avengers movies because it's a bit different than the Guardians movies, and like that's fair.
Yeah.
Like that's a fair criticism for sure.
I mean, my biggest criticism with Infinity War is the way that they use Star-Lord, because they just, I mean, he's kind of an idiot, but he's not to the point where he gets so self-conscious to the point where he fails the entire mission and basically sabotages to the point where the entire universe is snapped. So like I don't particularly like that, but you know.
Yeah. Grand scheme of things, though. Yeah. But yeah, like Infinity War is one where like I do have criticisms of that movie, but the good way outweighs the bad for me. Where it's like, oh, the thousands of other cool things they do outweigh the like 2 criticisms I have of it or whatever. So it's like, okay, whatever, it's fine. I do wanna read a couple comments here before we kind of get back to Joker. Noah mentions that there are some musical stuff on the TV side. Arrowverse had a couple musical stuff. Lucifer, Batman Brave and the Bold did some stuff there as well. So yeah. But in the movie side, this was kind of a overall. I guess there's probably been some musical sequences, and I don't know. I guess like a Birds of Prey did something, but like overall, this was like the first full-on musical. LBM says, I still don't know if I'm going to see it in theaters. Would you recommend someone to go see it if like they're kind of curious about it, or just to see it for themselves?
Yeah, I will say if you're a fan of Joker, specifically the way it ends, wait till streaming. If you're curious, that is. If you aren't a fan of the original, I think maybe you'll enjoy it, because it kind of is just a punch in the face to the people who did like that original. So like, yeah, it just depends on what side of the conversation you're on. For sure. Just depends.
I'd say like watch it at some point, because like I do think, like it or not, it's a very fascinating movie to talk about, at least like from just like an outward
huge misfire.
Just to be like, okay, because like I came out of the theater and I was just like, I didn't dislike it, I also didn't like it either. I was just kind of in a space of like, okay, that was a movie I just watched. How do I feel? And I still kind of feel like that, where I don't hate this movie. I also just like, I guess I also just don't care enough. Like I feel like they, and that's a bad thing, because I love that first movie. I do. I think that's a great one. But it's like, you don't make me care, and I feel like throughout it, like, I don't know, they just kind of break you down. I feel like throughout the movie, and like you kind of it's a hard movie to watch regardless. I think, like there are certain sequences where it's like, oh, I don't want to be here watching this right now, because it is very hard to watch in certain parts, and it's like, I don't feel good. And maybe that's the point. Maybe you're not supposed to feel good, I guess, but I don't know. LBN has 2 more comments here. I like the casting of Jon Stewart, but still mixed on the Hal casting, to be honest. Better than Josh Brolin. I do agree. I'm glad. No offense to Josh Brolin. I hope he gets someone in DC, but I did not like Hal Jordan as Josh Brolin. I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, that was not great.
LBM said, I'm excited for Brave and the Bold. I have been waiting for the Bat Family and a Fantastical and for Fantastical to return to Batman. I agree. I agree. I think I love the Penguin currently. Actually, I'm really loving that show. I love like the Batman. I think with Joker just coming out, but I do think with it, all the talk recently has been having me very much craving a more, not silly Batman, but a more fantastical Batman, a more comic booky Batman, if you will. So I like we can have both. I like we can have a more fun, grounded Batman over at Matt Reeves, and then we can kind of do our own silly little thing over in James Gunn's little world.
Yeah.
I think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of going back to Joker here. I mean, I guess we kind of already talked about Harley. I felt like, I feel bad for Lady Gaga, because I do feel like I almost feel like she didn't get her due. Like I feel like she comes here to sing her ass off, to give a performance. You know, like she's clearly cast in here. She's this fantastic singer, and I just
undercooked character to perform as. Yeah,
she
sure.
feels like a Folie's just a plot device for Joker, and that's, I think, a disrespect to Gaga and just a Harley Quinn character. I think.
And because really, it's kind of just a backwards kind of thing. What they do in this movie with the character is, with, you know, originally Harley Quinn was a character that was inspired by Joker and was in love with Joker,
right?
And Joker kind of just like manipulated her. In this movie, it's literally the other way around, where Arthur wants to be Joker for Lee.
Sure.
And Lee is kind of manipulating him to be Joker.
Sure.
So, and then it's just very strange, the idea to get that across, where it's literally like the opposite of what that relationship really is.
Yeah, I think, like, again, I do like that in theory. Like, I think, like, on paper, like, okay, that's a kind of a cool idea. But yeah, like, I don't think it's really cooked enough in the process.
Yeah.
I don't think they fully executed the way. And I was really excited because we've never really, in live action, we've never got to see the origins of Harley Quinn done, right? And I was very curious to see the like I love Harley when she can like escape the Joker, become her own character. I think that's the most fascinating thing about Joker, or about Harley. But
yeah,
I feel like we don't get to see it from beginning to end kind of thing. And I really love the idea of like the full on, she's a therapist, she goes in to help Joker, she slowly falls in love throughout the process. Like, I thought that was going to be a really fascinating story. I'm not saying you have to do that beat for beat, but I felt like, I don't know, I feel like you just kind of cut away a lot of the meat of Harley Quinn, and it's just like, yeah, she's crazy and she's in love, and there's a whole pregnancy plot line that I feel like didn't really make a lot of, like, I still don't know if she was really pregnant or if it was all a lie. Like, I think it was a lie. I think that's kind of what implied at the end, but
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. That movie left so many things unanswered and answered way too many things at the same time. It was weird.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, it really does kind of like a lot of people said, it is this kind of like epilogue to the first movie. It is just kind of like a
overextended epilogue.
Yeah, just being like, you know, it did really feel like a director at a chalkboard being like, okay, this is the first one. Like, this is the first movie. How do we feel? How do our characters feel? Like, it kind of feels like a YouTube video where it's like, okay, these are the themes of the first movie, and this is why this works, and this is why Arthur is evil, and this is why blah blah blah. But was he really evil? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't necessarily even think that's a terrible idea. I think in theory that can work well. I think that can be an element that works for your story, but
yeah,
I don't know. You're right though, but because it does, I think, take away a little bit of the complexities of the first one, I guess, if you're breaking it down to such an extent. Like, if the fun of Joker is you don't know what to expect, you don't know what's real and not, you don't know how he really feels. This movie's like, but now you do. Now you do know what was real. Now you do know how he feels, and yeah, it's a thing. I feel like
it's a movie that exists, and that's the best way I can put it, I guess.
Yep. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet from the movie that you would like to bring up and talk about a little bit further, or you're like, let's move on? let's get this in the past.
Yeah, I think we touched on pretty much everything that I'd like to discuss.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, exceptionally made, great score, just like the first film. Other than that, not a fan. Not a fan.
Yeah. I think as we're talking, but I am leaning towards more negative than I am positives.
Yeah.
But like, also, I'll say, like, I do think it is like slightly overhated. Like, I don't think it's like the worst comic book movie ever made. Like, I completely Like,
I
it
wouldn't
got a
call it
lower
that.
score than like Madam Web this year, and I was like, I disagree with that fully. I couldn't disagree less.
Yeah, okay. Here's my thing. Okay. Would I rather rewatch Madam Web, which I think is ironically fun to watch,
That is a
or
good
would I
point.
rather rewatch Joker, which
Joker,
is just a huge disappointment?
Sure.
I'd say Madam Web personally,
Okay,
but
fair.
that might just be me. That might just
Sure.
be me. It might be a sin to humanity, but
Sure. Madam Web is fun though. Like if you're like go into it thinking it's like silly, like a silly bad movie. Like it, like I do think it works as like a bad movie night kind of thing.
Yeah, just like a drunk night with the boys. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely. But then like even that like I'll put Joker probably over like 20 other bad comic book movies in my head, where it's like I put this over like a Fan Force Stick and Justice League and some of the other...
and like those Catwoman.
Right.
I'd probably say it's better than Wonder
Elektra
Woman 84. Yeah, the original Suicide Squad probably.
Right.
But like, would I rather rewatch Suicide Squad or Joker 2? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with that being said, we're kind of heading to the end of our stream here. Joker 2 is a movie that exists. I am happy. I am happy that we can kind of move on from Joker 2 a little bit, because like with every new trailer that came out with that movie, I found myself getting less and less excited for it. And I was just like, I am honestly really excited to just move on with the future of DC. We got Creature comes out in a couple months. I think that will clean our palette very well. Actually, just right now, like we have the Penguin airing right now, Super Lois airing right now, which are both excellent. Creatures comes out a couple months, and then next year is like the start. We get Peacemaker and Superman. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the future of DC and what comes next. Hopefully it's a bright future.
And also, just in terms of movies in general, as a horror fan, we got Terrifier 3 coming out this week. That's gonna be a huge palette cleanser, man. Like,
rest of the year seems fun, just in terms of like Moana 2 and Wicked and Sonic 3, and people aren't excited, but Mufasa, I'm kind of excited for Mufasa. I think that might be fun.
I think it has potential, but I feel like it's just gonna fall under the same category of the original, not the original, the remake.
The remake,
yeah.
I'm at a point with that movie. It's not even that I wanted to be good. I need it to be good at this point. I cannot have another bad Lion King movie. Lion King is my all-time favorite film. I hated the 2019 movie, and I need it. I can't do another bad Lion King.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's the thing about that remake is that when I first watched it, I kind of liked it. Okay. Never went back to watch it again, and just over time, it's just like, oh yeah, that wasn't great. Ooh, yeah, that wasn't great either.
It just feels so like anti-art to me. It feels like it's so
what the original had. What the original had was emotions for animals, just like their facial expressions, and it's just like you're supposed to pull emotion from deadpan animals, just like no.
Yeah. And to be fair, they do look better in Mufasa. I do think there is a slight improvement in the facial.
Yeah, I will say. And also, me and one of my friends have a running joke where it's just like some of the voice acting just feels so phoned in. And rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Love the guy, legendary actor. But in the remake, it's just like it sounds like they woke him up while he was sleeping, and it's just like, Mr. Jones, we need you to record this. And it's just like, everything the light touches.
But here's the thing. If they wanted to, they could have literally just reused the dialogue from the original and no one would have noticed. Because it's same. And that's the frustrating thing to me. Like, I am sometimes a defender of these like live action reboots. Are they all good? No, but I actually think there's a couple I think work. But what I hate is when it's like, hey, that movie you love, but the exact same. And it's like, no, I want to
Yeah.
give me like, I'll take like Little Mermaid and Aladdin. Like, I can respect those because they were trying new things. They had new elements put in there. Where it's like that one, it's like you literally did try. You just made the same movie, the exact same movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why Mufasa, I'm like, that's an original story, technically. Like, yes, it's connected to a franchise, but it's a story we've never seen before. That gets me way more excited than I ever was for the first. So,
I agree for sure.
With that being said, Mike, thank you so much for being here. This was an absolute blast talking with you for a bit.
Thank you for inviting me on. Just
of course.
Yeah, just to say that first. But you guys can find me on YouTube at Mike's Reviews and Analysis, and then Letterboxd. I believe it's the same name. Let me just check. Letterboxd. Yep, Mike's Reviews and Analysis, and then Instagram, Threads, Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it, and TikTok as well at Mike's Reviews and Analysis. So yeah, go find me.
Absolutely, yeah. Go follow him. You can find us both together sometimes over on Council of Creators as well if you want to.
If you want to see us absolutely unhinged, go check it out.
Those crazy ass live streams, absolutely. And as far as me, pipeline next week we're doing our. I'm doing my Hulk retrospective next week, 2008's Hulk. We're kind of we're going through and we're rewatching some of the older MCU movies, so that should be fun. Kind of like in a little bit in prep, early prep, but a little bit of prep for Captain America 4, I suppose. There's a lot of hulky elements in that movie, I guess. So, but yeah, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you on the flip side. Bye bye.